Welcome back to Jet Sound, where we explore the stories that have shaped the aviation industry. In our last video, we cover the top 10 deadliest air disasters in history. If you have not seen the first part of this video, click on the link in the description and watch the first part. So today, we're continuing our journey with numbers 11 through 20. These tragic events are less well known, but have been equally impactful in aviation safety improvement. So let's dive right in. At number 11, we have American Airlines Flight 587. In November 2001, just 2 months after 9/11, American Airlines Flight 587 took off from John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, trip to Santo Domingo, the capital of the Dominican Republic. The plane, an Airbus A300, was ready to take off on what should have been a routine flight. But just minutes after takeoff, the plane flew into wake turbulence left by another large aircraft. In an attempt to stabilize the plane, the co-pilot made sudden rudder movements, which caused the tail fin to snap off completely, leaving the pilots unable to control the aircraft. In a matter of seconds, the plane dropped sharply into a quiet neighborhood in Queens, New York, killing all 260 people on board and 5 on the ground. The tragedy, one of the deadliest in U.S. history, led to changes in pilot training and aircraft design, highlighting the fragile balance needed in aviation. Number 12. Lokomotiv Yaroslavl plane crash. On September 7, 2011, the Lokomotiv Yaroslavl ice hockey team boarded a Yakovlev Yak-42D aircraft, eager to start their new season with a game in Minsk. However, shortly after takeoff from Tunoshna Airport, the plane struggled to gain altitude and tragically crashed into a riverbank just beyond the runway. The crash, caused by the plane being overloaded and pilot errors, further complicated by one pilot's use of impairing medication, claimed the life of 45 people, players, coaches, and crew. Only one player, Alexander Galimov, initially survived the crash, but tragically, he gave up to his injuries a few days later. Another crew member survived, but the rest of the team and staff died in the crash. This horrifying loss sent shockwaves through the hockey world. Number 13, Korean Air Flight 801. On August 6, 1997, Korean Air Flight 801 was nearing its destination in Guam when it crashed into a hillside during its approach to the airport. The Boeing 747, carrying passengers from Seoul, struggled with poor visibility due to thick fog and a malfunctioning glide path system. The pilots, unable to see clearly and unaware they were too low, descended below the safe altitude. The plane hit the hillside, breaking apart and catching fire. Tragically, 228 of the 254 people on board lost their lives. The crash highlighted serious issues with navigation systems and crew fatigue, leading to changes in safety procedures to prevent similar disasters. Number 14. Air India Express Flight 812. On May 22, 2010, Air India Express Flight 812 was landing at Mangalore Airport in India after a long flight from Dubai. The Boeing 737, filled with passengers impatient to return home, faced heavy rain as it approached the airport. The runway, short and slippery from the rain, made landing challenging. As the plane touched down, it skidded off the end of the runway, broke through the airport perimeter wall, and plunged down a steep slope. The impact and fire that followed were devastating. Tragically, 158 of the 165 people on board lost their lives. Investigations revealed that the crew had struggled with the wet runway and that pilot errors played a significant role in the crash. Number 15, Swissair Flight 111. On September 2, 1998, Swissair Flight 111 was traveling over the Atlantic Ocean on its way from New York City to Geneva when disaster struck. The Boeing 747 was filled with passengers and crew, all looking forward to their destination. Suddenly, smoke began to fill the cabin, and the crew struggled to find the source of the fire. Despite their efforts to control the situation, the fire quickly spread through the plane's insulation material, which was highly flammable. The smoke made it hard to see and breathe, and the pilots lost control of the aircraft. The plane crashed into the ocean near Nova Scotia, Canada. Sadly, all 229 people on board were killed. The investigation found that the fire had been caused by faulty wiring and flammable insulation, leading to stricter safety regulations for aircraft materials and fire prevention. Number 16. China Airlines Flight 611. On May 25, 2002, China Airlines Flight 611, a Boeing 747, was flying from Taipei to Hong Kong when something went terribly wrong. Just 20 minutes after takeoff, the plane suddenly broke apart in midair over the Taiwan Strait. All 225 people on board were tragically killed as the wreckage fell into the sea. The investigation revealed that the plane had been improperly repaired after a tail strike accident 22 years earlier. The metal fatigue from that poor repair finally caused the aircraft to break apart. This disaster highlighted the critical importance of proper maintenance and thorough inspections in ensuring the safety of aircraft, leading to stricter regulations and practices in the aviation industry. Number 17. Air France Flight 4590. On July 25, 2000, Air France Flight 4590, a Concorde supersonic jet, was set to fly from Paris to New York. It was a routine flight for the sleek, fast aircraft known for crossing the Atlantic in record time. But as the plane sped down the runway for takeoff, disaster struck. A small piece of metal on the runway, left by another aircraft, caused one of the Concorde's tires to burst. The debris from the tire struck the fuel tank, igniting a fire. Despite the pilot's efforts to gain altitude, the fire caused a catastrophic loss of power. The Concorde crashed into a hotel just minutes after takeoff, killing all 109 people on board and 4 on the ground. The tragedy marked the beginning of the end for the Concorde, leading to its eventual retirement, and served as a stark reminder of how small oversights can lead to devastating consequences. Number 18. TWA Flight 800, a Boeing 747. On the evening of July 17, 1996, TWA Flight 800, a Boeing 747, took off from New York's JFK Airport, heading to Paris. The flight was filled with passengers looking forward to their journey across the Atlantic. But just 12 minutes after takeoff, as the plane flew over the Atlantic Ocean near Long Island, a sudden explosion ripped through the aircraft. The plane broke apart in midair, and all 230 people on board tragically lost their lives as the wreckage fell into the sea. The explosion was later determined to be caused by a spark in the center fuel tank, which ignited the fuel vapors inside. This heartbreaking disaster led to changes in fuel tank design and safety measures, aiming to prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Number 19. Nigeria Airways Flight 2120. On July 11, 1991, Nigeria Airways Flight 2120, operated by a Canadian charter company, was on its way from Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, to Sokoto, Nigeria. The plane, a Douglas DC-8, was carrying 261 passengers and crew, most of whom were returning from the Hajj pilgrimage. Shortly after takeoff, the crew noticed that something was wrong. The aircraft's tires had overheated during takeoff, leading to a fire in the landing gear. As the flames grew, the cabin began to fill with smoke, and the situation became dire. Despite the crew's desperate attempts to return to the airport, the fire had already caused significant damage to the aircraft's structure. Just before the plane could reach the runway, it broke apart in the air, crashing near the airport. Tragically, all 261 people on board lost their lives. The disaster highlighted the importance of proper aircraft maintenance and pre-flight checks, especially in high-temperature conditions. Number 20. Garuda, Indonesia, Flight 100 and 52. On September the 26th, 1997, Garuda, Indonesia, Flight 152, an Airbus A300, was on its way from Jakarta to Medan, Indonesia. The flight was nearing its destination when it encountered thick haze caused by forest fires, severely limiting visibility. As the plane began its descent, the pilots, struggling to see and relying heavily on instructions from air traffic control, became disoriented. Tragically, a miscommunication led them to descend too early, and the aircraft crashed into a mountain covered by dense jungle just a few miles from the airport. All 234 passengers and crew on board lost their lives in this devastating accident. The crash underscored the dangers of relying solely on visual cues in poor visibility conditions and led to improved communication protocols between pilots and air traffic controllers, as well as a greater emphasis on terrain awareness in cockpit training. Thank you for watching, and be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. What other disasters would you like us to cover in future videos?